September 7, 1939. Captain Władysław Raginis, 42, from Wilno, adjusted his binoculars inside bunker number 1 at Wisna. Through the morning mist rising from the Narew River, he counted tank silhouettes assembling on the opposite bank. 19 Panzer IIIs in the first wave, twice that number behind them. His hands remained steady. 3 days earlier, he'd sworn an oath to his commanding officer. Hold this position for 20 hours. Buy time for Polish forces retreating east. Give them a chance to regroup beyond Brest. The concrete walls around him felt solid. 18 bunkers spread across 3 kilometers of riverfront. 720 men of the 135th Infantry Regiment. Machine guns positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Could they hold? The Wehrmacht had rolled through western Poland in 6 days. Behind Raginis, Lieutenant Stanisław Brykalski checked ammunition supplies. 40,000 rounds per heavy machine gun, mortar shells stacked in wooden crates, enough food for a week if they rationed carefully. The bunkers had been designed by French engineers in 1937, part of Poland's defensive network. Reinforced concrete 1 meter thick, steel doors, ventilation systems, underground passages connecting some positions. On paper, formidable. What Raginis didn't know, 72 hours later, his 720 soldiers would face military odds never before documented in modern warfare, and survive longer than anyone thought possible. The German artillery opened fire at 0600 hours. Shell impacts walked across the defensive positions. Raginis felt each detonation through the bunker floor. Dust fell from ceiling joints. Outside, earth fountains erupted where 105mm rounds struck. The bombardment continued for 40 minutes. Standard Wehrmacht doctrine: soften the defenses before the armor advanced. When the guns fell silent, Raginis heard engines. Tank engines, dozens of them. German infantry crossed the Narew River at 3 points simultaneously. Rubber boats carried assault teams. Raginis watched through his observation slit. The range closed to 800 meters, 700, 600. He waited. Discipline mattered more than firepower in the opening moments. At 500 meters, he gave the order. Polish machine guns opened fire across the entire defensive line. The sound merged into continuous thunder. Tracers arced toward the boats. Germans fell into the water. Some boats capsized. Others turned back. But more kept coming. The Wehrmacht had committed Heinz Guderian's 19th Panzer Corps to this crossing. 42,000 men, 350 tanks, artillery support that outweighed Polish capabilities 15-1. The numbers seemed impossible, 60-1 odds in manpower alone. But Polish military archives confirmed every detail. First assault wave broke against bunker number 4's position. Private John Glinski, 23, from Poznan, fired his machine gun until the water jacket boiled. German bodies piled in the killing zone. Their officers pushed more men forward. Standard doctrine again. Accept casualties to identify defensive positions, map the fire zones, find the weak points. Glinski's gun jammed, overheated barrel. He cleared it, resumed firing. The Germans kept coming. By noon, Wehrmacht engineers had established 3 footholds on the Polish bank. Raginis watched them dig in, bring forward mortars, position anti-tank guns, professional soldiers executing a plan they'd rehearsed in training. The Polish captain understood the tactical reality. His bunkers controlled the main crossing points. German armor couldn't advance until those positions fell. But taking concrete fortifications required time, explosives, and infantry willing to close within grenade range. Time. That was the commodity Raginis had to sell. His men's lives were the currency. German Panzer IIIs moved into firing positions at 1400 hours. Their 37mm guns started systematically engaging Polish bunkers. Shells sparked against concrete, most deflected. Some penetrated observation slits. In bunker number 7, a lucky shot killed 2 men instantly. The commander, Sergeant Edward Goralski, sealed the damaged slit with sandbags, continued fighting from alternate positions. The bunker system showed its design strength. Each position supported its neighbors. If one gun went silent, two others covered its sector. Germans trying to flank a bunker ran into crossfire from adjacent positions. French military engineers had studied Verdun's lessons well: interlocking fields of fire, redundant positions, underground supply routes. But French engineers hadn't calculated facing 60-1 odds. Wehrmacht infantry tried a coordinated assault at 1600 hours. 3 companies, roughly 500 men, advancing behind mortar fire. They came within 200 meters. Polish rifles and machine guns cut them down in windows. The German attack faltered. Men went to ground. Officers shouted orders, but the fire was too heavy. They withdrew, dragging wounded. Raginis counted bodies through his binoculars. Estimated 70 German casualties, against 0 Polish losses in that engagement. The mathematics looked favorable, but mathematics didn't account for German artillery superiority, or the fact that Guderian could call forward another 41,500 men. While Polish gunners celebrated their success, German forward observers were already plotting coordinates. Within 2 hours, artillery would make those bunker positions far less tenable. Darkness brought temporary relief. The bombardment slackened. German infantry pulled back to reorganize. Raginis used the pause to rotate gun crews, feed his men, check ammunition. Bunker number 1 had expended 8,000 rounds. 40,000 remained, sustainable for perhaps 3 more days of heavy combat. Lieutenant Brykalski brought concerning news. Radio contact with headquarters had been lost. The main Polish forces were retreating faster than planned. German mechanized units were advancing on multiple axes. The original order, hold for 20 hours, might need extension. How long could they hold? Nobody wanted to ask that question directly. Raginis gathered his platoon leaders at midnight. 13 men assembled in the command bunker's dim light. He shared what he knew. German forces outnumbered them 60-1. Air support would arrive tomorrow. Heavy artillery would intensify. Relief wasn't coming. Their mission had evolved from delaying action to something else, something desperate. "We hold until we can't hold anymore," Raginis said. "Every hour we survive means Polish soldiers reaching safety elsewhere." The officers understood. This wasn't about victory. This was about time, buying it with their lives. Each man returned to his position knowing the mathematics. 720 men couldn't defeat 42,000, but they could make those 42,000 pay for every meter. September 8th began with Luftwaffe attacks. Stuka dive bombers screamed down at 0700 hours, sirens wailing, bombs erupted across Polish positions, earth and concrete fragmented. Bunker number 12 took a direct hit. The roof cracked but held. Inside, men covered their ears, prayed, waited for the structural failure that would bury them. The roof held. German artillery resumed at 0730. Heavier concentration now. 150 mm howitzers joined the 105 mm guns. Shells fell every 30 seconds. The bombardment targeted specific bunkers. German observers had mapped the defensive system during yesterday's fighting. Now they applied systematic destruction, professional Wehrmacht staff work. In bunker number 3, Corporal Tadeusz Ślewiński felt the walls shake, each impact closer than the last. Then a shell penetrated the ventilation shaft. Explosion inside. Ślewiński survived because he'd been in the ammunition room. 4 men died. The bunker filled with smoke. Impossible to breathe. Impossible to fight. Ślewiński led survivors through the underground passage to bunker number 2. They arrived coughing, bleeding, functional. The defensive line contracted. 17 bunkers now. Wehrmacht infantry attacked at 0900 hours. Larger force this time, battalion strength perhaps 800 men. They advanced behind a rolling artillery barrage. Shells falling 50 meters ahead of the infantry. Walking forward, standard combined arms doctrine. Suppress the defenders, close before they recover. Polish machine gunners waited until the last possible moment. Let the Germans reach 300 meters, 200, then opened fire. The killing began again. But this time, German tactics evolved. Their infantry carried satchel charges, explosive packs designed for bunker assault, teams of 3 men. 1 carried the charge, 2 provided covering fire. They worked closer, used shell craters for cover, professional soldiers learning the ground. A German team reached bunker number 9, placed a charge against the steel door, detonated. The explosion buckled the door inward. German infantry poured through, hand-to-hand fighting inside concrete walls. Polish defenders used rifle butts, bayonets, grenades in confined space. Sergeant Goralski, commanding the neighboring position, turned his machine gun on bunker number 9's entrance. Killed the Germans inside, also killed the Polish defenders, sealed the position. The mathematics were clear. Better to lose 5 men and maintain the defensive line than let Germans establish a foothold. 16 bunkers now, 715 men. German General Heinz Guderian's staff diary documented. Resistance at Wisna exceeds all expectations. Polish defenses holding despite overwhelming superiority. The problem? His timetable called for crossing the Narew River on September 8th, reaching Brest by September 10th. Every hour of delay cascaded forward, affected the entire operation. They believed their 3-day schedule was conservative. They were catastrophically wrong. The defensive system at Wisna came from lessons learned in blood 21 years earlier. French military engineers, studying Verdun's horrific casualties, had developed new fortification theories. Colonel Henry Mordack published his conclusions in 1924. Concrete positions must create overlapping fire zones. No dead ground, no approach immune to observation, every bunker supporting its neighbors. Poland's military command read those reports. In 1936, with German rearmament accelerating, they hired French contractors to design defensive networks along critical rivers. The Narew represented one such barrier. Natural obstacle, wide, slow-moving. Infantry could cross, but armor needed bridges or fords. The Wisna position exploited this terrain, 18 bunkers positioned to control every practical crossing point. Machine gun positions calculated to create interlocking fire at ranges between 300 and 800 meters. Ammunition storage underground. Command posts connected by telephone lines buried 2 meters deep. Captain Franciszek Dąbrowski had overseen construction in 1937. He'd placed each bunker after walking the ground himself, measured sight lines, calculated fields of fire, ensured no approach existed that couldn't be covered by at least 2 positions. The French engineers had provided the theory. Dąbrowski added practical Polish understanding of local terrain. What he couldn't predict, the bunkers would face odds unprecedented in modern warfare. Could any defensive system survive 60-to-1 numerical disadvantage? The concrete itself represented engineering advancement, reinforced with steel rebar in grid patterns, walls 1 meter thick, roofs sloped to deflect artillery, observation slits 15 centimeters wide, 1.2 meters tall, wide enough for vision, narrow enough to prevent direct fire penetration except by lucky shots. That single detail multiplied survival time. Within 3 days, German forces would expend 40,000 artillery shells. The concrete deflected 97%. Each bunker housed 15 to 20 men. Interior divided into firing room, ammunition storage, rest area. Steel doors sealed entrances. Ventilation systems pulled air through filtered intakes. Gas masks stored for every soldier. The designers had studied Great War gas attacks, built countermeasures into every position. Machine gun mounts allowed 180-degree traverse. Heavy weapons, CKM WZ-30 models, fed from 250-round belts. Rate of fire, 600 rounds per minute. Effective range against infantry, 1,000 meters. Against these weapons, German assault troops had rifles and light machine guns. Infantry advancing across open ground faced odds tilted violently against them. The system's strength came from redundancy. Bunker number 1 commanded the main ford. but bunkers 2, 3, and 4 also covered that approach from different angles. Germans attacking number 1 exposed their flanks to crossfire. Attempting to silence number 4 brought them under fire from number 5. The defensive web had no single critical node. Destroying one position barely weakened the whole. Captain Raginis understood this during his initial briefing. The fortifications weren't designed to win battles. They existed to buy time, make attackers pay in blood and hours. In September 1939, with German armor racing across Poland, those hours represented strategic value. Polish military doctrine called these positions traffic islands, not meant to stop the invasion, meant to slow it, force enemy forces to deploy, bring up artillery, conduct formal attacks. Each hour spent reducing one traffic island meant Polish forces elsewhere could retreat, regroup, establish new defensive lines. Some officers called it abandoning positions to their fate. Raginis called it mathematics. If 720 men could delay 42,000 for even 2 days, the exchange favored Poland's strategic situation. But explaining defensive doctrine to soldiers who would die executing it required different language. Raginis had walked every bunker on September 6th, shaken hands, made eye contact, told them the truth stripped of euphemism. We're going to hold here, we're probably going to die here. But every hour we survive means other Polish soldiers reach safety, your families reach safety. The men had nodded, accepted it. Polish military culture valued sacrifice. These soldiers understood their role in larger calculations. Opposition to the defensive plan came from unexpected quarters. Colonel Andrzej Brzozowski, commanding the 135th Regiment, had argued for mobile defense. Abandon the bunkers, fade into forests, conduct guerrilla operations. He'd studied Soviet partisan tactics, believed fortifications represented obsolete thinking. His debate with Raginis had occurred on September 5th, 2 days before German forces arrived. They'd stood in bunker number 1 while workers installed ammunition. Brzozowski had presented his case forcefully. Mobile forces couldn't be targeted by artillery, couldn't be surrounded, could strike and withdraw, maintain combat power. Raginis had countered with mathematics. 720 men in forest would inflict perhaps 500 casualties on 42,000 Germans. Maybe delay them 12 hours, but 720 men in prepared positions could inflict 2,000 casualties. Delay the enemy 3 days. The concrete multiplied effectiveness. Brzozowski had shaken his head. You're asking them to die for hours. I'm asking them to make those hours cost everything possible, Raginis replied. The colonel had departed, left Raginis in command. Polish military doctrine allowed frontline commanders tactical flexibility. Brzozowski's decision meant Raginis owned both the plan and its consequences. The bunker system's practical advantages became clear during early fighting. German artillery fired thousands of shells on September 7th and 8th. Most impacted harmlessly. Concrete absorbed the blast energy. Steel reinforcement prevented fragmentation. Men inside felt concussion, experienced temporary deafness, but survived. Above ground, the same bombardment would have killed everyone. Standard doctrine called for infantry to dig trenches, create earthworks, but entrenchments offered minimal protection against 105mm shells. Direct hits meant immediate death. Near misses buried men alive. Raginis calculated survival rates. Bunker defenders exposed to 3-hour bombardment, 95% survived. Trenches under identical fire, perhaps 30%. The mathematics justified the French engineering investment. German infantry learned this through bitter experience. September 8th's assault waves tried standard tactics, advanced behind artillery, rushed the positions during the gun-to-target transition, overwhelmed defenders before they recovered from suppression. But Polish machine gunners weren't suppressed. They'd waited in protected positions. When German infantry crossed 400 meters, the bunkers came alive. Interlocking fire caught attackers in crossfire zones. Bodies fell. Survivors went to ground. Officers called for more artillery. The cycle repeated. Wehrmacht battle reports from September 8th documented frustration. Enemy positions remain combat effective despite sustained bombardment. Infantry assaults suffer unacceptable casualties. Recommend heavy artillery and aerial bombardment before further ground attacks. Guderian read these reports at his headquarters 12 kilometers east. His staff had planned a one-day river crossing. Now they faced day 2 with minimal progress. The Wisna positions held. Polish machine guns continued firing. His armor sat immobile on the eastern bank. The problem wasn't Polish numbers. German reconnaissance accurately counted the defenders. 700, perhaps 800 men. The problem was those men occupied positions that multiplied their effectiveness. Each bunker commanded approaches, survived artillery, created interlocking fields of fire. Standard Wehrmacht doctrine called for combined arms attacks. Infantry, armor, artillery, air support working together. Guderian had all these elements, but terrain constrained their employment. Tanks couldn't cross the river under fire. Infantry couldn't advance through machine gun zones. Artillery couldn't penetrate concrete. Air attacks achieved psychological effect, but little physical damage. September 8th ended with German forces having gained perhaps 300 meters. At that rate, reaching the Polish positions would require 10 more days. Guderian's timetable called for advancing 200 kilometers in that time frame. The defensive system had transformed tactical equations. 720 men weren't just soldiers. They were soldiers amplified by concrete, positioned by terrain, supplied with ammunition. The multiplication made them equivalent to a force 10 times larger, but multiplication worked both ways. German forces had 42,000 men, unlimited ammunition, air superiority, numerical advantage, and time. They didn't need to win quickly. They just needed to keep attacking, apply pressure, find weaknesses. Eventually, mathematics would reassert themselves. Raginis understood this calculus. September 8th's success didn't change the ultimate outcome, but it bought hours. Those hours meant Polish forces 20 kilometers west reached fallback positions, prepared new defenses, perhaps evacuated civilians. The mission continued. September 9th began with fog. Thick river mist reduced visibility to 50 meters. German artillery fire slackened. Their forward observers couldn't identify targets. Infantry attacks paused. Both sides waited for conditions to improve. Inside bunker number 1, Raginis used the respite to assess damage. 2 bunkers destroyed, 13 men killed. Ammunition consumption at 60%. Food supplies adequate. Water situation concerning. The positions had storage tanks, but no resupply. What they'd brought on September 6th was all they'd have. Lieutenant Brikalski reported on morale. The men understood their situation. No relief coming, no retreat possible. But September 8th's success had proven something important. The defenses worked. German forces had thrown battalion strength attacks against concrete walls and failed. The soldiers felt vindicated. Their sacrifice was buying measurable time. The fog lifted at 1900 hours. Within minutes, German artillery resumed. But the pattern changed. Instead of area bombardment, shells targeted specific bunkers. Fire fell on number 6. Systematic destruction. 100 shells in 20 minutes. The concrete cracked, then fractured, then collapsed. 16 bunkers remaining, 700 men. Wehrmacht forces had adapted. Their initial attacks treated Wisna like a standard river crossing. Opposition expected. Resistance to be overcome quickly. But 3 days of fighting had taught different lessons. These weren't ordinary field fortifications. These were engineered positions requiring engineer solutions. German combat pioneers moved forward at 10:30 hours. Specialists trained in fortification reduction. They brought shaped charges, flamethrowers, explosive packs calculated for concrete penetration. Professional engineers attacking professional engineering. Polish defenders watched them work. The pioneers used craters for cover, advanced by bounds, placed charges methodically. When Polish fire forced them back, they withdrew to safe distance, called artillery onto that specific position, waited, tried again. Could the defenders stop this systematic approach? The answer came faster than anyone wanted. Bunker number 14 fell at 11:45 hours. Shaped charges blew the door. Flamethrowers forced defenders outside. Machine gun fire cut them down. German infantry secured the position. 15 bunkers left. That single success altered tactical dynamics. Germans now held one bunker. They brought up mortars, positioned them inside concrete walls, fired at neighboring Polish positions from protected locations. The defensive system's strength, interlocking fields of fire, became a weakness. Internal positions could now support German attacks. Raginis ordered counterattack. Lieutenant Brykalski led 15 men from bunker number 1. They advanced through underground passages. Emerged 50 meters from number 14. Polish grenades through the entrance killed the German mortar crew. Brykalski's men retook the position, but they couldn't hold it. German artillery had targeted coordinates. Shells fell within seconds. Brykalski withdrew, sealed the underground passage. Bunker number 14 remained German-controlled but isolated. The defensive line maintained integrity. German casualties from the counterattack, 8 killed. Polish casualties, 3 killed, 5 wounded. The mathematics were shifting. Each engagement cost both sides. But Germans could replace losses. Poles could not. Luftwaffe bombers returned at 1400 hours. 20 Stukas attacked in succession. Each bomber carried 500-kilogram bombs. The explosions walked across Polish positions. Direct hit on bunker number 11. The roof collapsed instantly. 19 men died, 14 bunkers remaining, 678 men. While Polish defenders struggled, Wehrmacht commanders refined their approach. They'd identified the system's critical vulnerability. Bunkers were strong, but they were static, couldn't maneuver, couldn't reinforce each other except through underground passages, and those passages could be targeted. German engineers studied captured maps from Bunker 14. The underground network connected positions in groups of 3. Destroy the central bunker in any group, and the adjacent positions lost mutual support. The defensive web could be unraveled one thread at a time. This understanding shaped September 9th's afternoon attacks. German forces stopped trying to overwhelm positions, started targeting junction points. Bunker number 8 commanded the central sector, connected to number 7 and 9 through underground passages. German artillery concentrated there. Captain Raginis watched the systematic destruction. He'd commanded number 8 until yesterday, knew every meter of that position. The concrete had withstood 2 days of bombardment, but nothing engineered could survive focused application of explosive force. At 16:30 hours, bunker number 8's roof collapsed. The explosion killed 12 men instantly. 3 escaped through passages to number 7. The defensive line now had a gap. Germans could advance through that sector without crossfire. 13 bunkers, 666 men. Wehrmacht infantry exploited the opening at 1700 hours. 2 companies advanced where number 8 had stood. Polish fire from adjacent positions caught them in crossfire. But the angles weren't perfect. Dead ground existed now. Germans reached 150 meters, dug in, brought up mortars and anti-tank guns. Raginis understood the tactical reality. His defensive web was unraveling. Each bunker lost weakened others. The interlocking fields of fire had gaps. German forces were establishing positions inside the defensive zone. Tomorrow they'd bring armor forward, assault remaining bunkers from multiple directions. The mathematics had shifted decisively, but the mission remained. Buy time. Every hour German forces spent at Wisna meant Polish forces elsewhere gained distance from pursuing Wehrmacht units. Night brought no relief. German flares lit the defensive zone. Mortar fire fell randomly. Harassment, prevent rest. standard doctrine for forces with unlimited ammunition facing defenders who had to conserve every round. Inside bunker number 1, Raginis gathered his surviving officers, 8 men. They represented 13 bunkers and 666 soldiers. Each man looked exhausted. 3 days of constant bombardment, minimal sleep, no hot food, water rationed, but none suggested surrender. "Tomorrow they'll finish this," Raginis said. "They've learned how our positions connect. They'll target junction points, collapse the system systematically." Lieutenant Brykowski nodded. "How long can we hold?" "Hours, perhaps until dark if we're fortunate." The officers discussed options. None existed. Retreat meant abandoning positions, attempting to break through German lines with 666 men against 42,000. Mathematical impossibility. Surrender meant captivity, possible execution. German forces had shown little mercy to resistance. "We hold," Raginis concluded. "We make tomorrow cost them everything we can." The officers returned to their positions, each man knowing September 10th would likely be their last day, each man accepting that reality. Polish military culture viewed sacrifice as honorable when mathematics offered no alternatives. September 10th began with artillery bombardment at 0530 hours, heavier than previous days. German commanders had committed additional batteries. Every gun within range fired on Wisna positions. The bombardment continued without pause for 90 minutes. Inside the bunkers, men endured. Concrete dust filled the air, each impact closer than the last. Walls cracked, ceilings sagged, but held. French engineering from 1937 facing German explosives from 1939. The construction had been designed for exactly this scenario. When the guns fell silent at 0700 hours, Raginis knew what came next. Infantry assault, maximum strength. Overwhelming force applied to broken positions. The Wehrmacht's solution, when finesse failed, apply more violence. German forces attacked from 3 directions simultaneously. Battalion strength on each axis, perhaps 2,400 men total. They advanced behind smoke grenades, used craters for cover. Combat pioneers led with explosive charges and flamethrowers. Polish machine guns opened fire at 300 meters. The familiar rhythm, interlocking fields of fire, bodies falling, survivors pressing forward. But this time, German forces had learned the geometry. They advanced through dead ground created by destroyed bunkers, avoided the killing zones, reached 100 meters. Bunker number 5 fell at 0730 hours. Shape charge destroyed the door, grenades inside. Polish defenders died fighting, 12 bunkers remaining. Bunker number 13 fell at 0745. Flamethrowers through ventilation shafts. Men fled choking. Machine gun fire cut them down, 11 bunkers. Bunker number 7 fell at 0810. Artillery had cracked the walls. Infantry assault finished it. 10 bunkers, 620 men. The defensive system collapsed. Without interlocking fields of fire, each position fought alone. German forces could concentrate overwhelming strength against individual bunkers. Mathematics reasserted themselves. 60 soldiers couldn't hold against 2,400 when isolated from mutual support. What they didn't know, in those 3 hours, Polish forces 30 kilometers west had completed their withdrawal, established new defensive positions, evacuated 2 towns. The time bought at Wisna had value measured in thousands of lives elsewhere. At 0830 hours, Lieutenant Brykowski detected movement northwest of bunker number 1, German infantry advancing with armored support. 3 Panzer IIIs positioned to provide direct fire, infantry behind them. Approximately 200 men in the assault wave. He adjusted his machine gun traverse, waited for range to close. The tanks came forward slowly, turrets scanning for targets, infantry using the armor for cover. Standard combined arms doctrine. Let the tanks suppress defenders, infantry exploit. When range reached 250 meters, Brykowski opened fire. His gunner, Corporal Stanisław Nowak, held the trigger for 8-second bursts. Tracers arced toward German infantry. Men fell. Others went to ground. The tanks pivoted. Their 37mm guns acquired bunker number 1's firing position. Shells impacted concrete around the observation slit. Brykowski and Nowak ducked. Shrapnel ricocheted inside. When they returned to the gun, German infantry had closed to 150 meters. Too close. The geometric angles favored attackers now. "Underground passage," Brykowski ordered. His gun crew abandoned the position, moved through connecting tunnels toward bunker number 2. Behind them, German combat pioneers placed charges against number 1's door. The explosion echoed through passages. 9 bunkers remaining. How many more could they lose before the defense collapsed entirely? Morning gave way to systematic reduction. Wehrmacht commanders had abandoned subtlety. They applied overwhelming force to each remaining position. Artillery preparation, tank fire, infantry assault. If defenders held, they repeated the process. Professional military problem-solving, patient, methodical, expensive in ammunition but conservative in casualties. Bunker number 6 fell at Narew 20 hours. Captain Raginis watched from number 2's observation post. He'd moved there after abandoning number 1. The bunker he'd commanded for 3 days now flew German flags. His men were dead or captured. The defensive line continued shrinking. 8 bunkers, 580 men. Under thick clouds rolling in from the east, German forces paused their assault at 1,000 hours. Infantry withdrew to consolidate positions. Artillery fire slackened. Raginis understood the tactical pause. Wehrmacht commanders were bringing forward additional forces, preparing coordinated attack on remaining positions, the final push. He gathered his officers again. 6 men now. They represented 8 bunkers spread across 1,500 meters. The defensive web had contracted to individual strongpoints with minimal mutual support. "They'll hit us simultaneously," Raginis said, "probably within the hour. 8 positions. They'll want to finish this today." Nobody spoke. The mathematics were obvious. 580 men in 8 bunkers against perhaps 10,000 Germans. The Wehrmacht had committed additional regiments, overwhelming force to eliminate stubborn resistance. Would their sacrifice buy enough time? Nobody asked. The question had become irrelevant. They'd held for 3 days, delayed German forces 72 hours. The mission was already accomplished. Everything after this moment was bonus time measured in blood. At 10:45 hours, German artillery resumed. Every gun within range fired simultaneously. The bombardment concentrated on all 8 bunkers at once. Raginis felt the walls shake. Dust clouds filled the interior, men covered against falling debris. Each impact seemed to penetrate deeper. French engineering had limits. 3 days of sustained bombardment had found them. The roof of bunker number 2 developed cracks. Not structural failure yet. But the concrete was degrading. Another hour of this pounding and the position would collapse. When the artillery lifted at 11:30 hours, infantry came from every direction. Wehrmacht forces had surrounded each remaining bunker. Raginis watched through observation slits. Germans advancing in company strength. 200 men per bunker, 1,600 total. Armored support. Combat engineers with specialized equipment. Polish machine guns opened fire, but fields of fire no longer overlapped. Each bunker fought alone. Germans concentrated on one position at a time. Bunker number 10 disappeared under explosive charges at 11:45. 7 positions, 565 men. Inside number 2, Raginis directed fire. His remaining gun crew, Brykowski, Nowak, and 3 riflemen, engaged targets at 200 meters. The machine gun barrel glowed red. Ammunition belts fed continuously. Shell casings piled ankle deep. Germans fell. More took their places. The waves kept coming. A Panzer III positioned itself 100 meters distant. Its 37mm gun fired directly at number 2's observation slit. The first round missed. Second round penetrated. Explosion inside killed 2 riflemen. Shrapnel wounded Brykowski. Nowak continued firing the machine gun. Could they hold another hour? The question answered itself when shaped charges detonated against the bunker door. Steel buckled inward. German grenades rolled through the opening. Raginis grabbed one, threw it back. The explosion outside killed 3 Germans, but more came through. "Passage!" Raginis shouted. His surviving men retreated through underground tunnels. Behind them, Wehrmacht infantry secured bunker number 2. 6 positions remained. Dawn had brought 13 bunkers and 666 men. 5 hours later, 6 bunkers, 540 men. The mathematics accelerated toward inevitable conclusion. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the battlefield, German commanders coordinated their final assault. 6 bunkers remained. They committed 2 battalions, 1,800 men, armor support from an entire Panzer company, artillery from 3 batteries, air support from Stuka squadrons. The attack began at 1400 hours, simultaneously against all positions. Raginis had withdrawn to bunker number 3. He watched through cracked observation slits as overwhelming force approached. Infantry advancing by bounds, tanks providing covering fire, combat engineers moving forward with specialized equipment. This was how modern warfare solved resistance. Applied sufficient force that defense became impossible. Wehrmacht doctrine called it annihilation through overwhelming strength, clinical, professional, inevitable. Bunker number 16 fell first. Direct hits from 3 tanks. Roof collapsed. 42 men buried. 5 positions. 498 men. Bunker number 4 went next. Flamethrowers through ventilation. Men died choking. 4 positions. 460 men. Bunker number 12. Shaped charges destroyed every entrance. Polish defenders fought inside until ammunition exhausted, then died. Fighting hand to hand. 3 positions. 420 men. How many hours had they bought? Raginis had lost count. 3 days, 72 hours, perhaps more. Time had lost meaning inside concrete walls under constant bombardment. The mission parameters from September 6th, hold 20 hours, had been exceeded 3-fold. At 1530 hours, only 3 bunkers remained functional. Numbers 3, 9, and 15. Approximately 400 men total. German forces had committed overwhelming strength. Infantry occupied ground previously held by Polish positions. Artillery observers had clear sight lines to remaining bunkers. The defensive system had completely collapsed. Raginis gathered his remaining officers for final consultation. Lieutenant Brikalski, badly wounded, Sergeant Goralski from number 9, Captain Dombrowski from number 15, 4 men representing 400 soldiers. "We've accomplished the mission," Raginis said. 3 days. German forces delayed. Polish units elsewhere reached safety. What happens now is beyond duty. Brikalski spoke through pain. "Surrender?" Raginis shook his head. "I swore an oath. Hold this position. If I can't hold it, I don't survive it." The other officers nodded. Polish military culture didn't require suicide, but it understood commanders who accepted responsibility for impossible missions. Raginis had commanded these positions. 720 men had followed his orders. 320 lay dead. The survivors deserved leadership until the end. "You're released from command obligations," Raginis told them. "Surrender if you choose. Fight if you prefer. I'm staying here." The officers returned to their bunkers. Each made individual decisions. Goralski chose to fight. Dombrowski chose surrender. His position had 70 wounded who couldn't walk. Brikalski stayed with Raginis. At 1600 hours, German forces launched final assault. Battalion strength against 3 positions, overwhelming firepower, professional execution. Bunker number 15 raised white flag at 16:15. Dombrowski and 70 men emerged. Germans accepted surrender, provided medical treatment. Bunker number 9 fought until 1645. Goralski and 40 men died defending their position. Not one surrendered. German combat pioneers found bodies stacked in the fighting room. Every man had died facing the entrance. 2 positions remained. Raginis in number 3. Approximately 60 men. last functioning element of Wisna's defense. German forces surrounded the bunker with overwhelming strength. Tanks, artillery, infantry. They called for surrender. Raginis refused. Wehrmacht doctrine addressed stubborn defense, apply maximum force, minimize own casualties. They brought forward heavy artillery, 150mm guns positioned 400 meters distant, direct fire at concrete walls. The bombardment began at 1700 hours. Inside number 3, men waited. Each shell impact shook foundations. Cracks spread across ceiling. Water pipes burst. Electrical systems failed. The bunker was dying. Structural integrity degrading toward collapse. At 1715 hours, the roof developed critical fracture, support beams visible through concrete. Another few shells, and the position would bury everyone inside. Raginis gave final order. Evacuate through passages. Surrender when you reach surface. That's an order. His men hesitated. Military discipline versus loyalty to commander. Brykowski resolved it. We follow orders, Captain, including orders to survive. 58 men evacuated through underground passages, emerged 100 meters from number 3, raised white flag. Germans accepted surrender, provided water, first aid, captivity. Inside bunker number 3, Władysław Raginis remained alone. He'd sworn oath to hold this position, promised superior officer he wouldn't surrender. Polish military culture understood such oaths, expected commanders to honor them. At 1730 hours, German artillery achieved direct hit on number 3's ammunition storage. The explosion obliterated the bunker. Raginis died instantly. Wehrmacht forces found nothing but rubble and concrete fragments. The last defender of Wisna had fulfilled his oath. During 72 hours of combat, 720 Polish soldiers held defensive positions against 42,000 German troops. This represented the longest delay of any Wehrmacht unit during Poland's 1939 campaign. German 19th of Panzer Corps, scheduled to reach Brest by September 10th, arrived September 15th. 5 days behind schedule. Those 5 days had measurable consequences. Polish forces retreating east gained 120 kilometers of distance from pursuing Germans. 2 divisions escaped encirclement. Approximately 15,000 soldiers reached defensive positions beyond Brest. Civilian populations in 3 towns completed evacuation. The time bought at Wisna translated directly into lives saved elsewhere. The numbers appeared impossible, 60 to 1 odds, sustained for 3 days. But German casualty reports confirmed the mathematics. Wehrmacht forces committed to Wisna reduction suffered between 900 and 10,000 casualties, depending on source interpretation. Polish losses, 680 killed, 40 captured. The exchange ratio favored defenders despite ultimate tactical defeat. German military analysis after September 1939 identified Wisna as significant operational failure. Not because defenders held, fortified positions eventually fall, but because reduction consumed disproportionate time and resources. Wehrmacht doctrine emphasized rapid advance, bypassing resistance, maintaining momentum. Wisna forced orthodox siege warfare when doctrine demanded maneuver. Heinz Guderian's personal diary recorded frustration. 3 days wasted, reducing a position that should have fallen in hours. Polish engineering and determination exceeded all intelligence estimates. Such delays, multiplied across the front, would jeopardize operational objectives. But Wisna represented isolated incident in Germany's 1939 campaign. Most Polish defensive positions collapsed within hours. Wehrmacht armor advanced 300 kilometers in 2 weeks. Poland's strategic situation deteriorated despite tactical successes like Wisna. Individual heroism couldn't compensate for systemic disadvantages in armor, aviation, and doctrine. Strategic impact extended beyond immediate tactical consequences. Wisna demonstrated that prepared defensive positions, properly engineered, could delay superior forces significantly. This lesson influenced fortification design throughout the war. Soviet defensive networks around Moscow incorporated interlocking bunker systems similar to Wisna's design. Allied planners studying river crossing operations analyzed German difficulties at Wisna when designing Rhine defenses in 1945. The psychological impact resonated throughout Polish forces. News of Wisna's three-day stand spread through military networks. Soldiers retreating under German pressure learned that 720 men had held against overwhelming odds. The example inspired continued resistance when surrender seemed inevitable. Warsaw's defenders cited Wisna when justifying their own prolonged defense in September 1939. After war's end, military historians studied Wisna as case study in defensive warfare. The battle demonstrated concrete's effectiveness against 1939-era artillery, showed limitations of numerical superiority against prepared positions, proved that interlocking fields of fire multiplied defensive effectiveness beyond simple mathematical calculation. French military engineers who designed Wisna's fortifications published analysis in 1947. They noted the bunkers withstood 3 days of bombardment that should have destroyed them in hours, attributed survival to reinforced concrete design, 1-meter wall thickness, and sloped roofs that deflected impacts. Their calculations showed similar fortifications could withstand approximately 72 hours of sustained artillery fire before structural collapse. Modern military doctrine incorporates Wisna's lessons. Defensive positions emphasize mutual support, underground connections, redundant firing positions. The principle that individual strong points gain strength from networked integration traces directly to 1930s French engineering as proven effective at Wisna. Poland's post-war military established September 7-10 as commemoration dates. Wisna's defense became symbol of resistance against impossible odds. The battle represented Polish military values, sacrifice for strategic purpose, defense of homeland despite overwhelming disadvantage, commanders leading from front. Captain Władysław Raginis received posthumous recognition as war hero. His decision to remain in final bunker rather than surrender became legendary in Polish military culture. The oath he'd sworn to hold position or die trying represented officers' commitment to duty above survival. Lieutenant Stanisław Brykalski survived. Captivity. Returned to Poland in 1945. Spent remaining life documenting Wisna's defense. His memoir, published in 1962, provided detailed account of three-day battle, described Raginis's leadership, defensive tactics, systematic German reduction of positions. Brykalski's testimony became primary historical source for battle reconstruction. Sergeant Edward Góralski died defending Bunker No. 9 on September 10th. His position fought until ammunition exhaustion, then continued with rifles, grenades, hand-to-hand combat. German forces found 42 bodies inside. Not one had attempted surrender. Góralski received posthumous valor recognition. The 40 Polish soldiers who survived Wisna spent war years in German POW camps. Most returned to Poland 1945. They organized annual reunions, shared memories of 3 days when 720 men held against 42,000. The survivors maintained that Raginis had bought time worth more than military calculations could measure. German commanders involved in Wisna's reduction advanced to higher positions. Heinz Guderian became Panzer Forces commander, led armored spearheads through France 1940, Russia 1941. But his memoirs mentioned Wisna as example of fortified defense's effectiveness against armored doctrine. He noted the battle had taught Wehrmacht valuable lessons about reducing prepared positions. Wisna's defensive zone remained abandoned after 1939. Polish authorities preserved bunker ruins as memorial site. Visitors can walk positions where 720 men held 3 days, see concrete walls scarred by artillery, underground passages connecting strong points. observation slits facing the Narew River. The mathematics of Wisna continued influencing military thought decades after 1939. 60-1 numerical disadvantage, 72 hours resistance. German forces delayed 5 days beyond schedule. These numbers demonstrated that prepared defenses, professional engineering, and determined leadership could multiply effectiveness beyond conventional calculation. Modern warfare evolved past concrete bunkers. Precision weapons, air superiority, maneuver doctrine made static defenses obsolete. But Wisna's principle remained valid. Defenders accepting tactical defeat to achieve strategic delay could alter operational outcomes. Time bought with blood had measurable value. 720 Polish soldiers held impossible position, made German forces pay for every meter, bought hours that saved thousands elsewhere. Their 3-day stand at Wisna represented mathematics transformed into sacrifice. Numbers converted to time. Time measured in lives saved beyond the battlefield. Captain Raginis had promised 20 hours. His men delivered 72. The oath fulfilled, the mission accomplished, the time purchased. Mathematics of modern war demanded their defeat. But those same mathematics proved that 720 men, properly positioned and willing to sacrifice, could delay $42,000 for 3 irreplaceable days. That was Wisna's legacy. Not victory, not survival, but time bought at highest cost, hours measured in blood, minutes purchased with lives, seconds that meant safety for others. The defensive principle proven valid even in defeat, sometimes holding impossible ground, for impossible time, against impossible odds, achieves what victory cannot. The September sun set over Wisna on the 3rd day. German forces occupied rubble and concrete fragments. 720 Polish soldiers had held their ground, made Wehrmacht pay for every meter, fulfilled their mission beyond any reasonable expectation. The oath had been kept. The time had been bought. The mathematics had been answered. Could any defensive stand mean more than that?